Welcome to Entrepreneurs in Healthcare. I've come to realize that entrepreneurship discussions are long overdue in medicine. I'm pairing up with voices from healthcare that value entrepreneurship and that are willing to come on the screen with me and hold a discussion. I'm hoping that hosting these conversations will open up pathways to making progress in medicine and not making entrepreneurship a bad word. Join along on this series as we dissect entrepreneurship, healthcare, and everything in between.
Well, so I'm a nephrologist. I've been practicing since 2004 with nephrology. I'm in Houston. I've been in multiple settings. I've been in employed private practice. I've been in academics. I was at Baylor College of Medicine as an assistant professor for a few years. And then I've been in, after that, kind of early around 2008, we started our own practice. And built a really good practice. And in that time period, I think the partner and I that I was working with, we became very entrepreneurial. We started like delving into all sorts of things, which I think doctors should get into. And we can talk about like real estate and like how to manage your practice and how, marketing, things of that nature. And then I split from that group and I formed my own. So it's called Remix Medical. It's a multi-specialty group. I felt like a long time ago, the writing was on the wall that doctors have to find a way of working across specialties. They can't just be single specialty anymore. I mean, you can be, but I just thought there's a place and a value to being a multi-specialty, especially the way payment structures are going. People want and how patients want their healthcare. They want the doctors to actually communicate. And there's no better way of communicating with the doctor if they're not like in the desk right behind me. And so, we formed that in about 2018. And I'm the managing partner of Remix Medical, and we've been practicing ever since.
So how many physicians work for your practice?
So we kept it small initially on purpose because we really wanted to just work amongst ourselves, but now we're starting to grow. So right now we've got 5 or 6 doctors and a handful of nurse practitioners, and we're not in the mode of trying to go and accumulate and grow to the point. There's a danger to growing without reason. We want to pick our right partners. We're very selective on how we can I hit a pause real quick? This is the hospital. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Hello.
We pause briefly as the hospital calls. This is life in medicine, folks.
Oh, yeah. Do the same way as last time, please. Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. But so we're very selective on what we're trying to do and how we're growing. And so we're not really growing as far as number of physicians. What we're trying to do is grow more as far as services go. So like we're doing surgical centers, dialysis facilities, things of that nature. And then a lot of our growth is mainly through partnerships with other physicians. You don't always have to work in the same group to be able to get, reach an objective. And so we partner with a lot of different other private practice physicians because I think that's the way doctors are going to have to go. You don't have to be under a single umbrella, but you do need to find a way of working amongst each other in this environment. It's just too difficult.
Absolutely. We're up against giant hurdles. You and I both know that.
Huge. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you got to build your own partnerships that are sometimes taken away when those corporations and the giants take over.
Right. And so my goal hasn't been to grow the number of doctors under Remix Medical. I'm not here to control other people. I'm here to work with other people because I think there's just going to be more value. And I think it'll grow organically the practice will grow organically on its own just by doing these things.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay. So, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of things from you that we can dissect and talk about, but it sounds to me at the crux of it is that you separated from a giant because you wanted to be your own boss. Is that accurate?
That is a good start. I realize that I'm just not employable. So, I just can't.
Can you explain?
I like doing things my way, and I mean, for better or worse. And I just don't like being dictated to. And more, even more so, what I don't like is when I have people that are not physicians telling me what to do. It drives me nuts. I just don't think they know anything.
And
Uh,
right. Okay, go
yeah.
ahead.
And so, I mean, maybe at one point in my life when I don't care as much anymore, I'll go and as an employee doctor and just do, work my hours and go home and be happy. I'm sure that could happen, but I want to do it on my own terms. Like I just want to have control over my fate and my destiny, Um, and so that's what get me staying in private practice to the point where I would even move out of Houston as opposed to being employed by someone if it wasn't under the circumstances that I wanted.
And can we talk about how it's better for the patients that you've described this?
Yeah, I just think that, there's when you're employed by a firm or a company or a corporate interest or a hospital system or even like a big conglomerate private practice, you've got diverging interests from what they want. Like what they want are numbers. They want, um, they want things that don't necessarily that maybe help them hit their corporate need, but don't help the actual patient. And so I can put resources to having a patient get, like, for instance, I don't mind seeing patients for free. I can afford it. And if someone needs my help, I'm not going to say no based on the insurance. Even if I'm out of network, I'm not going to say no because I believe that there's going to be some good out of that later on in some form anyway. And it's just doing the right thing. What's it to me to see someone for 20 minutes and make sure that the person is taken care of? But you can't do that if you work for a hospital system. I've tried, I've referred patients to hospital system, run doctors, and they're like, I'd love to see them, but they don't have insurance and they can't afford the cash rate. I'm like, what are you supposed to do? And it's not like they don't want to do it. It's just that they're not allowed to do it. So it's definitely better for the patient. And the other thing is that if you have your own brand, you have your own niche, it's like, I don't know, it's like you live in New York, right?
I'm right on the outside of New York and New Jersey.
Right. So you probably don't want to eat at Applebee's. You probably want to eat at the cool place inside town that isn't being, marketed to you and shoved down your throat every 5 seconds, right? You want to go to that place. Well, I think that that's what patients deserve. I mean, they're paying premiums, like crazy premiums for their insurance. They deserve some attention. They deserve some real personalized care. I mean, I find it hilarious that these corporate conglomerates are saying we'll provide you personalized care, and then you go into their waiting room and it looks like a Ford plant. It looks like an assembly line. It's nonsense. I was going to use another word.
Right. You want to eat at Le Bernardine and not at Applebee's, right?
Right. No,
you don't want the franchise chain. You want like the real deal.
You want the real deal. Like, how can you get customized care if you can't go to a place that can offer you customized care? They can say they do, but they don't. They don't. And the doctors have no incentive of doing it because they're being graded on metrics that have nothing to do with the patient. It's the number one problem in healthcare. Like everyone says it's the insurances and the pharmaceutical industry. And yeah, sure, those are problematic. But the number one problem with healthcare, it comes down to who controls physicians. And the more that go under a corporate umbrella, the more corporatization of healthcare there is, the more there's going to be a sinkhole here as far as patient care in this country. That's just it. There's nothing else.
Let's take a really short break.
I couldn't be more proud to be featuring another virtual conference that SoMeDocs is hosting. This one is called Private Practice 101, Starting Your Own. And it is going live virtually May 31st through June 2nd of 2024. The best part of this, besides the fact that there's an expert lineup that we have curated to you, chaired by Dr. Laura Hockman, is that this conference is going to be accessible even after it goes live. So attendees get access for 6 months to the content, and we welcome all of you in. We are pricing our tickets nice and low so that everybody can afford it. We're pairing it up with CME. We are making sure that it is accessible. So again, it is live and virtual, so you can attend from your own living room in your pajamas. You don't have to take any planes to get there. You don't have to rent hotel rooms, don't have to be away from your family. You can soak up all of our goodies regardless of where you are. I hope to see you there.
Back to our episode.
So yeah, I don't want to be able to feel helpless when I'm taking care of my patients. I want to be able to say, I can help this guy. I can come in on Saturday. I've had patients say, can you come in and see me on Saturday? Yeah, I can open my office. I own my office. I can open the building and I can see you. And I've done that, you know? So
Yeah, I've thought of that so many times myself when I was practicing as an internist, just how stifling it was to work
yeah,
for someone who was not in the office. They were physically removed from the interaction, and not to mention the many layers between myself and that decision maker up at the
yeah,
top, right? When you're not the boss. And so I think that's what I refer to when I sort of ask physicians, like, you are the boss now. It's not that I look at them as the boss of that relationship, the physician and the patient relationship. I don't think we're the boss. I think it's a team.
it's a team effort. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. But I think that it's amazing to be the boss of the practice that's running those interactions, because you're then like completely a part of that interaction. And you can make those decisions that I couldn't make when I work for a giant. I
It
can't
has
leave
to
here
be that
being.
way.
Exactly,
It,
100%.
anything less than that, and the patient's gonna get a disservice. I'll give you an example. Like, so I'm from Ohio, and my parents got older, and so I moved them to Houston. And my dad he had some medical issues, and he needs to see a cardiologist at one of the big hospital systems here. And it's a great hospital system. And he needs follow-up with them every once in a while. But he's 84. He can't just calling their phone system. He's like, I can't get an appointment. I leave messages. They don't get back to me. They don't do this. So I invariably, I get my staff or I myself call the doctor's office and I take care of it. It's easy for us. It's not the doctor. It's not the nurses or the nurse practitioners or whatever. It's the whole system. Like, if I wanted that kind of service, I would just get my healthcare at AT&T or Comcast. Like,
Totally.
it doesn't work.
It's a
And
fact.
and it's awful. And so now I'm slowly shifting him to more independent private practices where they're able to have like a much more flexible form of communication.
And do you agree that in order for physicians to do this, they have to take on a more entrepreneurial mindset?
There's no doubt. Like, I believe the reason that more physicians aren't entrepreneurial is because from the day we are quote unquote born as becoming physicians, from when we enter medical school, the system rips that form of thinking from us. They say, we know you're creative, but just memorize these 15 things so you can become top of your class and get into the right residency program. Then in residency, it's like, well, we know you're being creative, but this is what the evidence-based medicine matters, but they're like, but this is what the evidence says, and this is what we need to do, and this is what the paper says, and let's just so they're ripping from the day we become doctors, they're ripping the thing that can make us entrepreneurial. They're removing that part to the point where we think very two-dimensionally. And it's hard to go back and become what made us into great potential physicians, that element of creativity. And there's an artistic capability, which is where that entrepreneurial spirit comes from. That's kind of taken away from us. And then they employ us and they say, oh, you can't do this. You can't run your own practice. You guys are doctors. You're good at listening to people's hearts and lungs, but you don't know how to do accounting. It's insulting, but a lot of people just fall for it because they're like, yeah, I don't know how to do this. No one ever taught it to me. And then they remove the one thing that in you that is able to like produce entrepreneurial projects. It's a no-brainer. Doctors have to find a way of getting it back. So things like what you're doing is very cool. What I find on LinkedIn, I see a lot of people like that. I mean, I want to be around that. You have to.
Totally. And
Yeah.
and our patients, by the way, they benefit from an innovative thinking physician. Like,
Yeah.
do you want a physician that just thinks through the algorithms, or
Yeah.
a physician that, by the way, like with AI coming, we're not going to have to memorize those algorithms? And there's
Yeah.
actually some really exciting aspect to that, because you're going to have a critically thinking human that
Yeah.
uses that robot that already plugs in the algorithms and spits out the answer.
Yeah.
now sort of uses their brain and their artistic abilities, like you're saying,
Right.
to craft like a plan that's applicable to the human that's in front of you.
Right. I think that patients like that. I think, look, we don't have a bazillion patients. I don't want a bazillion patients. I want to make sure that the patients I do have get what they need, but they know that if they're running into a problem and they tell me about the problem, that I'm going to do whatever I can to fix that. And I'm allowed to fix it because it's my practice, and they know the people around us because it's not a big assembly line. And so they're able to get the things that they need, and they ask for, I mean, the patients need more than what's just being told to us, in the media. They need all sorts of things. I mean, I think 75% of healthcare is done between the visits, not at the visits. Maybe 90% of the stuff is done between the visits. Like, so how do you manage between the visits? Well, these big systems can't do it. They don't have the proper workforce. They don't have that infrastructure. They don't have the intellectual curiosity to be able to deliver that. We care because we know that if the patient's happy, then they'll refer more. I mean, it's just a good business model and it's the right thing to do. They're paying crazy premiums. They should be able to communicate with their doctor's office and get a call back immediately.
Totally. I so agree with you there. Go
Or
ahead.
text the office. Like, my big thing is, I tell my patient, just text the office. They're like, you can text the office. I'm like, yeah, we have a system that you can text the office. You can't text the hospital. You can't text
Amazing.
the Optum
Of course not.
doctor.
Exactly. I mean, again, it's all these like big corporate giants.
Yeah.
I don't really even understand what the public doesn't see here, how they don't see it versus I just don't know if they care because again, we're up against such a behemoth
Yeah.
that how do we change this? And in my experience and in my opinion, and clearly in yours, entrepreneurship is the solution, right? Because
Yes.
and that's what I'm fighting against with with doctors that fight this concept of entrepreneurship. Like there's so many doctors out there that still have like a bad reaction to that word, and I think that they're not stepping outside of the box, the traditional box, and they keep thinking that for some reason the word entrepreneurship equates to taking advantage of people when it doesn't. It's what
Yeah.
you make
This
of that
this
word.
is this is part of so this starts in training. They're like, people are like, I remember thinking, I wonder what can I make as a nephrologist? I never really thought about it. I wanted to go into academics, but you didn't ask. And if someone did ask, they'd be shamed. Like, who cares? Just take care of the patient. It's like, well, you should care. You've just put in 12 years of your life into this thing. You should know
Totally.
what's in it for you. And so we're shamed from the get-go to look, we're shamed from the get-go to actually ask those questions because we're being programmed to be nothing but physicians, just do quote unquote doctoring. So the same institutions that are training us are also not wanting us to compete against them. And they want to employ us, or they have a sister organization that they want us to work for. And they want us to put it there because otherwise people like you and me will go out there and open up a shop right next door to them. And why would a patient want to pay $20 for parking when they can pay no parking for me and get seen on the same day? They can't compete. So those big institutions can't compete. And so from the get-go, they train the doctors and they train the residents and they train the medical students to be nothing more, but they have to be thinking about nothing but the patient and nothing else matters.
Totally.
And they don't let no, and it just takes if you break away and you're lucky enough to break away and you see
Right.
some light and then you experience some success, that's the only way
Totally.
you ever do anything different. So I
Although
think
when
this is,
it's although when you're with the patient one-on-one, nothing else does matter. I mean, when they
yeah,
walk in the door and you walk in the door, right? It's
yeah,
the two of you and that's it, or whoever's in the room to help.
yeah,
I think that they really try strategically to blur those lines,
yes.
right?
They
And
think that if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to do shady medical practice.
yes,
Like,
totally.
oh, you just want to order 14 MRIs on the guy in the next month.
Right.
No, that's not the case. One, no one can get away with it. Two, that's bad business practice. Three,
Totally.
you can be entrepreneurial and be ethical. There's no,
100%.
yeah. And so they made that word into like a bad word.
Yes.
But this is nothing more than it's to shame doctors into being
Totally.
control them. It's nonsense. Like,
Well,
oh,
this
he's just a
whole
business
thing,
guy.
yeah, and this whole thing came about. I mean, I was going to anyway make shows and build series, but this whole thing kind of happened really quickly because I was pushed against the corner by a comment that a colleague made when I posted about
I followed it.
entrepreneurship and its importance, and that I truly think that to take medicine back, we need to really take on entrepreneurial mindset. I got pushed to a corner to sort of insinuate that no, entrepreneurship is not it. And again, not to mention that I was also told that because I no longer practice clinically, I have no say in how medicine should be run, which is a crock of bull because,
Yeah, it's nonsense.
that's a different story. And I won't talk about it now because that's
No, I saw that. That's what I mean. I never post. I don't post too much. I don't put my opinion out there. I'm kind of low
right,
key. But when you posted that, I'm like, this is garbage.
right,
It pisses me off when I hear people say that.
totally.
And
And
it's always
again,
coming from the guy that's a slave to some corporate conglomerate.
well, either that or just and again, there's all kinds of reasons why, but I think in this case, there could be like some competitive sort of inner workings that we just don't know about. Again, I've built out a pretty like complex business that helps to promote doctors. There's a lot of doctors out there that are appreciative of it. Most doctors who know about it do, but there's always that little subset of entrepreneurial doctors who are themselves trying to build something similar,
Yeah,
who of course, listen, we're in general, where many of us are type A, many of us are competitive and very motivated by nature. But at the end of the day, like if we actually come together and pull our talents together, we have a chance against the behemoth healthcare system. Again, it's not cut out for our work's not cut out for us. It's going to be difficult. But if we actually stop competing with one another and pull together our ideas and our entrepreneurial mindsets,
yeah,
we came together to find solutions, then I
yeah.
think we can achieve a change of some sort.
No, I agree. And I really believe that there's more people out there that want to hear from people like you who are, and I look through your website and all the stuff that you're doing. This is important. Because there really is no place for people to say, like, how do I do this? You always end up saying, I got your name from someone and he says you do this stuff. Can you help me out with it? I get that a lot, like word of mouth things. But the reach you can do now with social media and a lot of the marketing things that you're doing, talks like this. I mean, it's going to reach people, and there's a lot of good that's going to come out of that. And
Well,
you
and
don't have to dismantle the corporate structure. It's always going
right,
to be there.
yes.
But there's a choice that the public has. And even if some of those patients find their way to you, it's better than them getting thrown into that assembly line.
100%. And listen, I think that that's one of the positives of social media, right? Knowing that social media has tons of positives and negatives, I think one of the biggest positives is that it's pulling us together so that we now have some, like, we have some chance of, I don't want to say defeating what's in our way, because again, we have to work with the corporate giants and we have to work with the hospitals, right?
Yeah,
Because
you
that's where our
can.
patients, exactly, that's where our patients get hospitalized. But we at least stand a chance to now, I call it branding, but brand ourselves and become individual celebrities that have their fans, right? In the form of patients that really love our practice. And then the hospitals and the corporate structures work with us almost like as freelancers to some
Yeah,
degree,
that's the way
right?
it should have. I think that it probably was a lot more like that before. I mean, the
Yeah,
hospitals to me always felt like it's only recently where they became having more of an adversarial relationship. And it's probably because
exactly.
their margins got cut. And then
Yep,
they're like, well, we need to dip into that pot of
yep.
primary care doctors and specialists and whatnot and get their referrals and to keep their system going.
We
And I
need
think,
to own, for me, it
yes,
was them saying we need to own them because we need to create this like ecosystem where it's almost like a fraternity where
yeah,
it's like the brothership, and you've got to, for example, even just refer within that fraternity or else you're, kicked out. And then you've got to literally leave the ecosystem because of,
yes,
the things we sign, like the different clauses that we sign in
Yeah.
our contracts, right? Where
Mhm.
they literally own you even when they fire you.
Yeah, I know. Eh, Because we don't think about lawyers are bad guys. That's what we learn. I mean, I love my lawyers. They help me every day to get through from point A to point B. You need them. But we don't think about that. We think, oh, this is the last place I'm ever going to work in my life. And 3 years later, you're like, how do I get out of here? And you have
Totally.
to literally move like 200 miles to get out of that non-compete. And
Right.
I mean, it,
It's like a marriage, maybe. It's
it's
it's like you need
they
to
impose
sign
so
a
much will on you. Yes, it's like a marriage.
yeah.
Except
It's like
I
a
don't, I think,
marriage and you right.
yeah,
And you
not
need to
mine,
sign a
hopefully.
prenup is the point. Meaning,
Yeah,
you're coming out of residency and you're really not worth much there. Most of us, right? Because we take out so many loans and things like that. So you wouldn't think of a prenup. That's our problem, right?
yeah,
That we don't think of ourselves as the Hollywood stars. And so we don't think that we need a prenup yet until we get the wealth that makes us think of a prenup, but it's wrong thinking, and that you need to get a prenup right when you leave the residency programs, because you need to ensure that as you build up wealth, right, that you're protected, but also that you're not taken advantage of by your
yes,
partner, aka the corporate structure,
right,
who
right.
then feels like they own you through the years. And for example, if they fire you or if you leave, they want to hoard and keep all of those patients that really are there because of you. They're your fans.
Yeah, I've bounced in different places, and my patients usually follow me and if they don't, they find their way later on. Because there's no replacement for people who provide true personalized service. There's just not.
No,
They're
totally.
like, people think like, oh, my medical records are there, I'm just going to stay there. Okay, well then when you have trouble getting hold of your doctor or your nurse
Exactly.
or whatever,
Yeah.
then they find their way back. And
But
it's
how do
just,
how do they find you if the corporate structures have become very clever even in
yeah,
that perspective? Because when a doctor leaves the system, they won't many times they will not tell the patient population that that doctor is leaving. I've seen
mhm,
this happen in real life.
yeah,
They also many times even after they've left, they'll just schedule the patient with someone new, and sometimes even just tell the patient at the visit, oh, I'm sorry, that doctor has left, so now you're seeing a new doctor. And the patients get, by the way, the patients get mad at the doctor because they think that it's the doctor that left without telling them.
right. No, I know. And then you just kind of hope that those doctors kind of hope that the patients will somehow find them online. But when we left, so we left one of the bigger institutions, but before we did, we knew this was going to be an issue, that just because the law says something, they don't have to do it unless they don't have to follow the rules unless someone calls them out on it. So my partner and I, we went and we got like a really heavy hitting lawyer, and we said, what can we do? What can we do? What are we allowed to do? And what do they have to do? And so they wrote the letter of resignation for us, and we forwarded basically all our correspondence through them. So they knew that they weren't going to be able to, and it wasn't like a small town law firm. We got like some, tough lawyers that have a big name. And, it just, that was a move in my opinion, which I thought was pretty smart, because they couldn't push you around then. They'd have to go through a legal structure that actually had your back.
Do you
So
mean you were entrepreneurial?
something like that, more
Yeah.
scared. I think at the time I wouldn't say entrepreneurial. I think we were scared. We're like, what can happen? What's going to happen? We don't want them to, because otherwise they'll come up with all sorts of excuses. So then I actually hand delivered my own patients a letter saying, I'm no longer with this institution. I'm opening
Right.
my practice. Here's my number. And we would give it to them by hand and mail the
Wow.
ones but they tried to stop that. They
I
were
was
like, no, but
going to
it's like,
say
look,
how.
huh?
I was going to ask you how you got away with that, because I
Because
was
we told them the patient is legally obligated to knowing where their doctor is and what's going on
wow.
with their medical records. And it doesn't have to come from you. It can come from the physician, and we're going to reserve that right. And we did.
Amazing. By the way, to those listening, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, is that's the beauty of social media today, is that
Yeah.
if you're a doctor and you have not considered branding yourself, all that means is that you are creating a place online where you can be found, so that
Yeah.
people literally can start just Googling you. And listen, if you've got an account on LinkedIn, on Instagram, wherever, they can literally just Google your name, find you, and then either see your address listed there or send you a message and say, hey, I was a patient of yours. Where are you practicing now?
Yeah. Like, I believe that every doctor should have some footprint online, some way or the other, because otherwise, if they're only like, I see some doctors that you go to their website and it's the hospital's profile page for them. And that's ridiculous. Like, you should own your own Google profile. That's awful.
Totally wrong.
You know, have your own Instagram page. They can't stop you from doing that, and do your own posts. It doesn't cost anything. And, you know, and you're building your own you're building your own brand as yourself, your doctor brand, because you don't know, maybe in 15 years, you want to go into like software development and people are going to be like, well, I like that doctor's ideas. I see him on social media. I'm going to reach out to them. And that's maybe your next job or your next opportunity. Who knows? But we didn't have, this was before Instagram and Facebook and all this stuff when we
Right.
first left. And we
Right.
just said, and I really believe, like, if anyone's listening, like, lawyers are a big deal. I don't do anything without my lawyer saying it's okay, because it gives you that added protection and it's worth it. And they know what they're talking about. It's not stuff that's been passed down from one person to the other of what's okay and what's not okay. And they represent you. And so I really believe that a good, solid lawyer, and we have a couple that focuses on healthcare, it's impossible to do anything without that.
Right. Interesting. And that can be hard for individuals. I think that could be the factor that sometimes overwhelms individual physicians from breaking up, quote unquote, with the big corporations, is feeling small, feeling like the corporations are coming with their big time lawyer, and here you are. And, can you afford the big lawyer? Can you, make moves yourself against a behemoth, et cetera?
Mhm.
It can be overwhelming.
It absolutely is. But I think that there's enough of us out there that say it can be done, that hopefully podcasts like this and like more and more posts on LinkedIn, and it gives people the courage to be able to say, yeah, I can actually run this practice myself. I can partner with these guys. I
And
can
I
get
think
advice from these guys.
Yeah, and I think that there's even lawyers out there now that
Yeah.
are starting to really see our struggles and
Mhm.
come to our aid, and vow to really help physicians to defend themselves, because they see that it can lead to a better healthcare. So just one name comes to mind is Amanda Hill, who's actually speaking at our private practice virtual conference that's coming up
Mhm.
May 31st to June 2nd, virtually. But I've actually heard her speak live, and she's one of those lawyers who really recognizes that physicians need to break free from the systems, and I am here to help you do that from a
Yeah.
legal perspective.
Yeah, I think there's a niche for lawyers in this too. It doesn't always have to be about um complex legal transactions and healthcare transactions. It can be just about helping the local physicians. There's a lot of us out there. It's just that we're kind of, but where do they go to meet? Where do they go to talk? Where do they go to discuss? Where do they get reinforcement that their worth is more than what their RVU numbers are? You need that. You need a platform
Totally.
like that.
100%. Yeah,
And
that's
I
awesome.
mean, only now am I seeing things like this. Before we were just, you're kind of flying blind. LinkedIn has
Yeah.
made a big difference,
And again, that's what's been happening over the years. Is we used to practice this way where everybody was independent. The hospitals were complete separate identities and entities. And then over time, I think I don't know what set it off. I mean, I have some ideas, and they're so complex. I don't want to get into it now, but I think that over the years, we've been taken advantage of, and it's almost like many of us couldn't even tell that this was happening.
Right. Well, because you're living day to day, you're seeing patients and
Exactly.
those trenches, you don't
Right.
think about it.
Right. And you're not thinking entrepreneurially many of the time,
Right.
most of the time, right? You're thinking
Right.
about, again, what did we learn in residency? We didn't learn anything entrepreneurial. We
No,
only
it's
learned
against
medicine.
their interest to teach us anything on how to do any of that.
None. And that's why, by the way, it's not because I'm a person who's going to teach business to students, but that's why I'm opening a student section in SoMe Docs, is
Yeah, that's
because
good.
gradually I want to link up these amazing, talented students that are pre-med and medical students, right? That are already learning the medical part of it. I want them to know that there's resources out there and physicians who have done it, and like, let's link them up. Let's get mentorship going. Let's build conferences together so
Yeah.
that students outside of their programs can learn that, oh, you can actually create a private practice.
Yeah.
Let's take a really short break.
Hey everyone, Dr. Donna Corriel here from SoMeDocs. I am so excited to be presenting the new student section of SoMeDocs. Over at doctorsonsocialmedia.com, we've already got a doctors section that is alive and thriving and growing. And we now have a brand spanking new student section where we're welcoming students in, and they get a ton of perks for a very low price. We invite all of you out there who are medical students or pre-medical students who want to increase your networking circles, who want to be given opportunities to grow in the medical field. And so many perks come with our student membership. Please check it out at doctorsonsocialmedia.com/membership. I cannot wait to see more students be a part of our venture.
Back to our episode.
The other issue is that there's a lot of noise out there. So you have people, noise not in a bad way, but just it's so many different kinds of messages that are being thrown around. So you have your group of people on LinkedIn that talk about, direct to primary care, and concierge medicine and things of that nature. You have people that are more traditional and say, no, we should do healthcare like this. And so if you're a young doctor and you're looking at this, you're like, it's so it's just so much information coming in that you're like, oh, I'm just gonna take the job at corporation X over on the corner. It's easier, and and you just don't. But if you have a platform like you're talking about, it makes a big difference. I think that people are going to really want to go to that, and I think that the more that these hospital systems and these these retail giants, which I think is silly, but I mean that's neither here or there. That for them taking over healthcare, more and more people are going to get disgruntled. That they're going to have no other choice. Either they get out of medicine altogether, or they're going to have to really start doing some soul searching on how do I end up doing my own thing, or the group of doctors that want to have take things into their own hands.
Absolutely, 100%.
You need that platform. You need those platforms.
Yep.
Yeah,
I completely agree with everything you said. And I really hope that a series like this can start conversations where we make it okay to talk about concepts that maybe we were told not to speak about, or maybe we weren't told straight away, but we were trained against doing. So
yeah,
I
you're
really
ashamed of not being
exactly.
Yeah.
I think there's no shame in both entrepreneurship and in money. I think it's unfair, additionally, to say to a doctor, you're not allowed to think about money. I think it's weird to do that. It's
No,
weird to shame someone to think about their livelihood.
It's ridiculous, and yet somehow it just works.
Yes.
There was a doctor that we trained together and we finished fellowship, and I was getting more into the entrepreneurial stuff, and I would talk to her and I'd be like, what about this and this? And she's like, look, she held up her stethoscope and she goes, look, all I need is this. Now I'm thinking, I don't think so. Well, now 20 years later, it's like, I now how things going,
Right.
It's like they're asking me questions. Same people are asking me questions about what about this and that. It never works.
Right.
And they're going to replace you. It's like, it's not like these institutions like you.
Of course. Well, they like you if you're bringing them patients. But again, once they have those patients, you're replaceable like a cog.
They're going to replace you. They're going to replace you with nurse practitioners. I mean,
and they're going to market whoever they bring in. They're going to market like they're the same. And that's exactly the point of why we each need to be out there on the platforms, marketing ourselves for the unique skills and talents that we each possess, right? Because again, the giants don't really care. They're marketing you temporarily for their own benefits, but the second you leave, they keep the marketing material and they just market the next person as being just as good as you.
Being just as good, or being just as, but in essence, they're cheaper. They don't have the same, they don't have the same experience. Right. Like I tell patients all the time now, and it feels good. I go, look, I'll tell them, look, I've been doing this for over 20 years. And their eyes open up a little bit more, like, man, this guy may know what he's talking about.
Right.
You know, a new grad can't say that, you know?
Right. Right.
And there's something to be said about the years of watching the, you know, progression and the evolution of healthcare and how diseases have unfolded and your experiences with other patients. I mean, there's something to be said about that, why you decide to do a treatment plan with the patient and so on and so forth. But the hospitals don't care. They'll just get every new grad and they'll just cycle you out. And where are you? You know, you're 20 years into service and now you're being pushed out, and it's just, that's the inevitable way things are going to go.
Totally. Well,
And
that was a really insightful conversation, and I love having your viewpoint and your experience. So I thank you for getting on the Zoom and for recording this with me.
sure,
It's going to
thank
be
you.
available both in video and in audio. If people want to kind of follow you, where's the best place that they could do that?
I mean, I think if most of the physicians and that, you know, want to if they want to reach out to me, and I don't do a lot of activity yet. I'm trying to get into it, like by looking at your website and whatnot.
Right.
But it's LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Yeah.
I think LinkedIn is the best place because I check it daily, and
Yeah.
I use it as a sandbox for my ideas and everything. So
Wonderful. Yeah, I feel the same. I really like LinkedIn. It's more professional than the other platforms, so I really connect with it. So
I'm not going to dance on TikTok anytime soon. So
right.
yeah. So I think LinkedIn is probably the best place for me to be.
Yeah. I think
Safest
most docs are most comfortable, right, on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so thank you. I appreciate you
Thank
hopping
you for having me. Yeah.
Of course.
Thanks so much for listening.